I'm looking forward to working with Congress to fully investigate what happened, make sure that it doesn't happen again, and also look at some of the laws that create a bunch of ambiguity in which the IRS may not have enough guidance.
So the IRS needs guidance? There's an understatement. Folks, here's a picture of Sarah Hall Ingram. She was commissioner of the IRS office responsible for tax-exempt organizations from 2009 to 2012. Now, on her watch, conservative political organizations were targeted, yes, targeted, for extra scrutiny. Many would call that harassment. Question, has she been fired or asked to resign? Her successor, Joseph Grant, has, but she has not. She's changed jobs. She now runs the IRS Affordable Care Act office. So she's responsible for the IRS enforcing Obamacare. Can anyone trust this person to manage patient privacy and security? More important, can anyone trust the Obama administration to find competent and ethical staff? Let's go to Charles Ortel, columnist at the Washington Times. Charles, the IRS is being told to hire thousands of agents to enforce Obamacare, because unless they have lots of new Obamacare police, Obamacare is dead in the water.
Yes, I think this, it's tough to keep track of all the many strands of the various scandals, but I think one way to put them all in perspective is to remember that the team at the top here got its start, not the traditional way, but as a group of community activists going all the way back. And what is their basic plan as community activists? You inflict pain to get gain. So you see this in the IRS piece. What you see is, and what the media is focused so far on, is how may the IRS have been used to punish opponents and critics of the Obama administration. What the media has yet to engage upon, and I think they will shortly do so, is how has the IRS under the Obama administration rewarded friends of the Obama administration by going light on audits, by not pushing as hard as they could, by letting other 501c3 and 4 organizations get massive contributions. So this is internally, I think, the biggest scandal, with all deference to the AP and the press, the biggest domestic scandal revolves around the IRS. As for Obamacare, we have to remember that the actual regulations under which Obamacare is due to be enforced, even those haven't been fully drafted yet. The original budgeting was way too light for putting the implementation phase together, so no one really knows at this stage how Obamacare is actually going to work. But who in their right minds has any confidence that it makes sense to turn medical records over to an IRS that is so politicized, that has where integrity has basically been destroyed, and now might be led by the very person, as concerns Obamacare, by the very person who so egregiously went after Tea Party groups?
Well, who on earth is going to believe that there is no connection between the culture of corruption, political corruption at the IRS, and the highly politicized White House? I mean, who on earth is going to believe that there's no connection there? Let me move on to Benghazi and your thoughts on where we stand on Benghazi.
See, I think the Benghazi story is, there's a bit of misdirection going on here. Benghazi tragically resulted in the loss of four Americans, considerable destruction, potentially now abuses in the way in which the administration has dealt with whistleblowers. But the real tragedy that was going on, I think, and that was so politically sensitive in that time frame, was happening in Egypt. Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood had been sold to the American public by the Obama administration as a secular organization that we should feel happy to see in charge of Egypt. By June 29th, 2012, Morsi was already behaving like a pharaoh and a rising tyrant, and had threatened on that day, it's in a New York Times article, in front of his supporters when he swore himself in, he made a top priority securing the release of the blind sheikh. That had to be a huge political problem for the president. And one wonders, in the gaps, the so-called 67-hour gap between when the emails on Benghazi that we finally got start and when the attack actually happened in Cairo, where was the real intensity back and forth? My suspicion, it was among the campaign, the administration, over what was going on in Egypt, what was Morsi demanding, and I think that's a story that the American public will really begin to concentrate upon in these days and weeks ahead.
Well, if politics pollutes impartiality and professionalism at the IRS, and politics pursuits and pollutes professionalism in getting help to an ambassador and other Americans who are under attack, if politics gets in the way of that, and obviously politics is getting in the way of the American administration telling the truth to the public about Morsi, it just seems that politics is a cancer in this administration, and it becomes a national security issue.
Well, indeed, and we can talk about the various domestic scandals, but actually the far more serious one is providing aid and comfort to our enemies. And what we appear to be learning now through whistleblowers and other late-breaking information is that the Obama administration may well have been providing aid and comfort to al-Qaeda in toppling Gaddafi in Libya, and possibly now in toppling Assad in Syria. Now, that's a message that even left-wing supporters of Obama will not be happy with if the details support these highly controversial claims. So I think people ask, is this as bad as Watergate? I think it's worse than Watergate. I think it's worse than Teapot Dome. I think we're talking Benedict Arnold here.
Well, the only thing worse than declaring, as the administration had during the campaign, the only thing worse than declaring that al-Qaeda is dead is actually working with al-Qaeda elements to achieve your agenda.
And hiding and knowing how sensitive that is. I mean, the one name that really doesn't come up enough is Valerie Jarrett. A second name is Uma Abadan. These are two foreign-born people who are very powerful inside the U.S. Government at this point in time. And one imagines that right around September 11th, days after the Democrat convention had finished, that the firestorms going on, not simply in Egypt or Libya, but also in Yemen and in the Sinai and elsewhere in Chennai in India, that was a set of pictures that the political wing of the Obama campaign and the administration just did not want to see happen. So if we could get the emails, the cables, the testimony, the contemporaneous information about what really was going on then while the Obama administration was trying to sell a success story, I think that's the explosive story.
All right, Charles, less than a minute left. You know lots about Egypt. Rebels, once again, this time starting with a petition, are trying to fire up support for a new election. Does that have a chance?
Anything is possible in that great country. It's one of the first ones I spent a lot of time in back in '75. The fear, of course, is that Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood could potentially be replaced here, not by more secular and moderate group, but by even more harsh radical Islamists. So, I mean, when you have a failed state, which sadly I think Egypt is close to being, you could go in directions that are very unpleasant for the residents, for the region, and for the wider world.
It's hard to believe that at one time we were calling this Arab Spring and linking the idea of spring to something good, flourishing like democracy. And a short time ago, some of us actually believed there was a chance of that. Charles Ortel, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me on.
Charles Ortel, The Washington Times.